and start categorizing now. Start getting into those good habits now of keeping track of your expenses, not just always looking at, oh, how much do I have in my bank today to go buy flour? Like really think about where you want to be in your future and how your finances can get you there.
Welcome to the Breadwinner Podcast. This is the show for sourdough microbakery owners who are building a sustainable, successful, profitable business from their home. If you are already in business or if you're dreaming of starting one, this is the place for you. I'm your host, Caroline Bauer. I own a successful in-home sourdough bakery, and I am here to share everything I've learned that works and that doesn't, plus everything that I'm researching along the way so we can build thriving businesses together. Welcome back to another episode of the Breadwinner Podcast. I'm Caroline Bauer, and today we are here with a guest. This is Megan Morales.
Yes, Megan Morales with Purple Elephant Bookkeeping.
And I'll share a little bit about how this came to be. So last week, I was telling my husband about this little dream that I had about partnering with a bookkeeper. I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if I could find a bookkeeper who could just niche down and specialize in microbakeries, and I could send all of my podcast listeners to her. And then the next day, I was at a workshop for a local women's network that we're part of, and I met Megan, and we got to talking, and Megan used to own a bakery. And not only that, she now owns a bookkeeping business and specializes in bakeries. And I was like, oh my gosh, please come on the podcast and blow our minds. And so she's here.
Yes. Hi, guys. Hi, welcome. So yes, I used to own a bakery. I had Serial Killer Sweets from 2019 to 2022, and we specialized in these giant cookies, but I also did croissants and breads, donuts on the weekend, and now I do bookkeeping with a specialty in bakeries.
It's just so amazing. I love it so much. So I would love to just give you the floor a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and how you came around to bookkeeping from baking.
Sure. So yeah, I had technically been in the food industry for about 15 years. I started working in my mom's bakery. So I started there. I don't think you've met my mom yet, but she used to have a bakery when I was growing up.
I actually think I sold her focaccia at the market.
Yes, sell her some bread. Yes, because she was like, oh, to finally put two and two together that we're in the same organization. And then I also had a popcorn store, opened up the bakery. Literally, COVID happened the next day from opening up the bakery. So there was a lot of transitioning at that time. I ended up closing it down to focus on my family. But during this transition of all of the things, and I think of what does a bakery need? What does a baker need that they just never have time for? It's always bookkeeping. It's always the finances. Mm-hmm. So my mom and I, as bakery owners, we always were curious and going back and looking at everything that we've done and what was always missing. And it was having a good bookkeeper and a good handle on our finances. And you're always looking at what's the number in the bank? How much money do we have in the bank to spend on XYZ? But you're not looking at your profit and loss. You're not looking at any equity that's being put in, balance sheet, all of the real reports that tell you the financial strength of your business.
Yeah. And it feels so, for someone like me, it feels intimidating.
Yes.
I don't know what I don't know.
Exactly.
And I just always feel like I'm behind. So you are doing a great service.
And not only that, even you're being pulled in 1,000 different directions. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're a mom or you have kids and you have the bakery and you have orders and you have customers. It's bookkeeping. As a bookkeeper, I know that every business should be spending at least a minimum of 2 hours a week handling their finances. That's categorizing, that's making sure the money's where it's supposed to be, that there's no double charges. That's even going through if you're paying for subscriptions. Are you utilizing those subscriptions, website, apps, all of those things you really need every week.
Wow. Mm-hmm. You moved from baking to bookkeeping. What lights you up? Like how? What? I feel like that's not necessarily a natural transition.
It's not. And if you knew me before I became a bookkeeper, you would have been like, Megan, there's no way you're a bookkeeper right now. Get out of town. But it's actually really funny because it was my mom's idea. So my mom was like, yeah, we need to do something with bookkeeping. We need to and then create spreadsheets or whatever it is that bakers need that they can just buy. We actually started with wanting to do digital products.
Okay.
And as we're learning more about bookkeeping, I was like, oh, I'm really good at this. Oh, I remember when I did this at the bakery on QuickBooks, or yeah, I had to do all of these reconciliations and nothing ever matched at the time because you didn't have the time to focus on it. But now, as a bookkeeper, I am able to obviously take the time on everybody else's books, but I'm able to see, I love fixing the problems. So if your numbers don't match, it's like a puzzle piece to me. So I love to just go back in to the puzzle and make everything match and find what's missing. I love finding where you're overspending. I love it when this just recently happened where I had a client who was spending an obscene amount of money on their WordPress. And I'm like, you're not utilizing almost anything on this plan. Let's save you some money and go down on a lower plan. So I just love the little kind of details of that, which again, if you knew me before, you'd be like, Megan, there's no way. But I'm really good at it. And I love it. I know.
That's probably the thing that stresses a lot of us out.
Mhm.
And I love that that's where you get excited now.
Oh, yeah. I love to just get in the zone with the client and just really deep dive into their books. And I think, too, that's also what sets me apart from other bookkeepers is I don't just categorize. I really look at the numbers because I've owned a bakery before.
Mhm.
And so I know you're probably overspending on this. Or, hey, maybe we should talk to the vendor and see if you can get a deal if you purchase X amount or something like that.
Wow. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see small business owners make?
Number one biggest mistake is not having a personal and business bank account, or having those, but then constantly using your business bank account for the personal spending. That's a really bad habit to get right off the bat. So let's say you decide to go legit, get an LLC, do all of your tax filing, and you start putting personal expenses on your business card, you actually lose like the legal aspects of even having an LLC. So that's a big thing that you lose right there. You actually will spend more money with a bookkeeper or an accountant because now they have to separate all of your personal and business finances. So I would say that's probably the mistake that I'm just like, please don't do that because you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of extra money and you lose your legal status.
Wow. That's so good to know.
Yes.
Are there any other big mistakes that you see, or is that kind of the most important one?
That's definitely one of the most important ones for sure. Really, other common bookkeeping mistakes are just not paying attention to your numbers. You're not reconciling your books every month. So reconciliation is where you take what's on your bank statement and you match it to what is on your QuickBooks or your spreadsheet statement. This is to make sure you're not getting double charged for something, overcharged for something. Maybe the bank or somewhere stuck in a fee, and those are things that you need to bring up to the bank at the end of the month.
Okay.
Yes.
That is so helpful. All right. You told me that the thing that you really would love to share about is timelines for bookkeepers, or for those of us who are DIYing.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely fall in the category of DIYing, but need to hire a bookkeeper very soon. But for those of us who are DIYing, and especially a lot of our listeners are just starting their microbakeries, can you blow our minds? Help us know a little bit what we need to be doing, like weekly, daily, and over the time so that we don't get far behind.
Of course. So if you're just starting out, of course, make sure that you have a system to track all of these expenses. Some people are really awesome with spreadsheets. You can just do a Google Sheets, Excel, until you really start getting transactions coming in. But if you're just starting, keep track of your startup expenses. So equipment that you buy, if you're purchasing ovens, trays, anything like that, make sure to keep track of it, even if it does come out of a personal account in the beginning. And that's going to be considered a startup cost, and that's going to be a tax write-off at the end of the year. Daily, you always want to be checking the syncing. So let's say if you're on something like QuickBooks Online or on Xero, go in through, check, make sure that your transactions are syncing, making sure that they're categorized correctly in the chart of accounts.
For those of us who aren't sure, what exactly does syncing mean?
Okay, yes. So majority of banks, if you are on a system like QuickBooks Online or on Xero, it actually automatically syncs. So you just put in your bank account information, and then that platform actually will pull all of your data from your bank. Makes it super easy because you just go and you click through. Let's say you go to Restaurant Depot, you buy 100 pounds of flour, you just click it through and you categorize that to your cost of goods sold. And it's super easy. You can set up rules like automation rules. Yes.
Syncing in my brain, I saw it S-I-N-K-I-N-G, and I was like, I know sinking funds is a thing.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, this is when your
We're
bank account is syncing with your software.
Yes.
Okay. We're on the same page now. Okay.
Yes, definitely. We don't want to sync any funds. We just want to sync the transaction.
Cool.
So you don't have to.
Sorry.
It's okay. That is fine. I didn't even think about syncing
I
funds.
always see words in my brain, and I saw the
That's okay. So yes, using those types of online platforms makes it 100 times easier because it does a lot of automation for you.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Weekly, you want to make sure that, of course, all of your bills are being paid on time. You're not incurring late fees. The same thing, want to check the transaction. You just want to make sure throughout the week, throughout the day, that everything matches. So if your bank says you have this much in here, you want to make sure that your online platform or even your spreadsheet says that you also have the same amount and that's being categorized correctly. At the end of the year, when you turn in this, it's called a balance sheet, right? So typically you're going to give your balance sheet to your tax accountant, your CPA, tax preparer, and they're going to pull all of that information to file your taxes. If that information is not correct, you're going to overspend on taxes, or you could possibly underspend on taxes and then get hit with a penalty later on. So keeping all of that good throughout the year is key. And also, as bakers, we know the holiday season, a lot of us are very busy. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things happening. And come January, February, when it's time to sit down, get that paperwork together, and you're like, I have no idea what happened. December was a whirl. Yes, it was. If you stay on top of it, you won't have to think back to so many questions.
Amazing. And probably checking in every day.
Yes.
Makes it a lot easier to stay on top rather than even a weekly check-in.
Yeah, definitely. So you do want to do, yes, a daily and a weekly. And the daily is just okay. Yeah, let's say Sunday, Mondays are your big spend days. So you're going to go do a lot of spending those days. Check in Monday night, check in Tuesday, 5 to 10 minutes, and make sure that those transactions are coming through correctly, that they're being categorized correctly, so that your accountant at the end of the year doesn't have such a hard time. And then you're not having to remember, oh, what was that for?
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Mm-hmm. And quarterly is a big one. That's where you want to review all of your P&L, which is a profit and loss statement, and a balance sheet. So the two differences between those, especially as it relates to bakeries, is let's say you are an LLC. That's typically what most people end up getting. Is we have something called an owner's draw. So this is a big one. This is where people get tricky because they say, oh, I'm going to use my business card, to go to Starbucks or Dutch Bros and get a coffee, and I'll just owner's draw it. Technically, no, you're not supposed to do that. What you do is every week or every month, you actually send money from your business account to your personal account. That's the owner's draw. And then you use your personal card.
Okay.
Where that gets tricky is when you're looking at your paperwork on your profit and loss statements, you won't see that owner's draw there. And you say, oh, I made XYZ. Why is this not on my profit? Because that is actually considered an equity into your business. And so that comes off of your balance sheet. So there's two big players that you have to look at every quarter, and that's your balance sheet and your profit and loss statements.
Wow. And that's where it starts to go over my head and
Yes.
why we need people like you.
And basically, really, too, like with the balance sheet, that's why I said that's the big snapshot of your business, because it has all of your equity, your assets, any loans that are taken out, does have your profits on there, but that accounts for every single transaction in your business is that balance sheet. So that way, let's say in a year, you want to open up a commercial bakery and you go to the bank and you want to get a loan. and they say, oh, how much money are you spending? Where's that money going to? You take them your handy dandy balance sheet and you say, this is exactly how much I've made. This is how much I took out in owner's draws. This is the type of equity that I have in my business. Okay. And you might get a loan. So you get a bakery.
That is a dream. Amazing. And so with that timeline in mind, as we are moving toward the end of the year and then toward tax season,
yes,
what do we need to keep top of mind?
Right now is the time. Let's say you have not touched your books at all for 2024. Now is the time to start making sure that everything is built out. Your chart of accounts. So the chart of accounts is going to be whether you use a cloud-based system or do it on an Excel sheet. This is how you categorize all of your transactions. So for bakeries, you want to make sure that you have your cost of goods sold. If you do have a food waste, a line item, I know that was in the Q&A. If you're spending anything for labor, that's where you have labor, any inventory, trays, any things that aren't necessarily the actual ingredients, but things that you're buying. That'll be a separate line item. I know possibly a lot of you are probably in your home, but you still want to have a category for what you pay for rent, for electricity, for those types of utilities. And the reason why I say that is if you start accounting for it now, if you do transition to a bakery later on, one, that expense will already be there, but then you'll also be able to be like, okay, this is how much I know I can forecast to pay for rent and utilities in the future.
Mm-hmm. That's super helpful. Is there a particular software that you recommend?
Honestly, it really comes down to what you are as a person. QuickBooks Online is a really easy software to use. They are constantly updating it. They have a lot of really good apps on their phone, different types of tracking. There's also Xero, Xero is another really good one. But it really just comes down to what you prefer as an interface. They both do the same thing. They pretty much run the same amount of cost. I think QuickBooks does have more app features. So let's say you're out and about and you need to send a receipt to yourself, right? You don't want to lose it. There's always like little snapshots that you can do on the QuickBooks app, which I want to say Xero does, but I'm not 100% on their app usage. Yeah, they're both pretty much about the same, to be quite honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seems like QuickBooks has been around longer, and I think there's some bookkeepers who don't work with Xero, but they all work with QuickBooks.
Yeah. Bookkeepers, for the most part, we're all going to work with QuickBooks. I can work with Xero because I am Xero certified, but it's also not my favorite. I'm just not a fan of the interface. But if you've never used a software before and you go to Xero, you'll be like, okay, this is fine. But then when you go to QuickBooks, it's prettier at the end of the day. It just looks nicer. It is nice because let's say you're just starting out, you're a sole proprietor and you're doing your taxes at the end of the year. Because it's a part of the Intuit program, all of your stuff is already there. So you don't have to worry about it if you do your taxes yourself, which I don't recommend. Please get at least a tax preparer because everybody, if you do your taxes yourself, you are missing so many deductions.
Okay. So I opened it up on Instagram and had a couple of people ask questions for you. The first is, how should we account for unsold product? If we have a market and we're left with some bread that didn't sell, what do we need to do on our books to account for that?
So there's two things, right? And I feel like every bookkeeper is going to be a little bit different, and it ultimately ends up to how your tax preparer is going to want that categorized. So when you are first categorizing everything, you are already doing your cost of goods sold, right? So you're already categorizing your flour, any milk, butter, any of those things, right? It's already being accounted for. Labor, you want to account for your labor for that time as well. So for the food waste, you can definitely create, and it's going to be an additional category, and you just do it food waste, and you can track, let's say you brought $100 worth of food, but you only sold 50, you can just put the 50 right in there in the food waste category. That's the easiest way to do it because your accountant will be able to see, okay, this is how much we need to take out from your cost of goods sold and labor. Which labor, please make sure you are putting in a payment for yourself on your bookkeeping.
What is the best way to do that? Because there's a lot, like with baking, of time that is not necessarily hands-on. If the dough is in the fridge for 24 hours, should we be paying attention to our hands-on time and paying hourly, or what should that look like?
Yeah, so definitely for wages for yourself, it's always going to be hands-on time, right? Because the time that the dough is going to be in the fridge or proofing, that technically is going to come out of your utilities. So if you're thinking, what is it called? When you have your rent and your utilities, you're going to take the time that it's in there, that it's utilizing those spaces, but that's not time that you are technically hands-on. So definitely pay yourself. Everyone has different ideas of what that is, but pay yourself an hourly wage, a livable wage, and add that into how many doughs you can make within those hours and how long that hands-on hours is every week.
Okay. I feel like a lot of bakers, especially when they're getting started, take that money that they would pay themselves and then just put it back into the business.
So you can, but you still want to account for that, right? So if you are doing that livable wage, you can still owner's draw it. It may not need to hit your actual bank account, but there's another way that you can account for it in your bookkeeping, that you're reinvesting it into the business. But you still want to track the money that you are making. And I say that because when you start getting bigger, when you start to have a lot more income coming in, you're not having to reinvest as much. You do want to make sure that your product pricing matches, what you need to be making for a wage.
That makes sense. That's super important. Okay, so once a business is started, someone has asked how to register to make the business official. Do I do that and open a business account for it first?
So to make it official, there's a few different ways. If you're already a sole proprietor, you can go and get a DBA. Technically, that's official. That's enough to get a business bank account. You can go one step further and you can go and get an LLC, which is the limited liability corporation. That's what most people will go through. And you can get a business bank account with that as well. So if you're going to get a DBA, typically you're just going to go down to your city municipal court, the courthouse. Some have a small business sector, and you just go in, file your DBA, pay the fee. It ranges anywhere from $7 to $30, depending what county that you're in. Get it notarized, and you are technically official. You can take that DBA paper to the bank and get a business bank account. I didn't think to ask if everyone was in Texas or not, because different states, of course, will have different ways to do that, but that's the easiest.
Yeah, our listeners are all over the country,
all
even
over
the world, but
nice.
Specifically the country.
Okay, because some states do require you to have a business license, and that is separate from getting like a DBA or an LLC, so that's something totally different. To do an LLC, the easiest way is just to go to your Secretary of State for whichever state you're in and file. Those are anywhere from $150 to I think about $300. You don't have to pay a third party to do it. Every single one will have a video of exactly how to file it down. You're typically going to be one person, and that's also the easiest way. I'm really against using third-party filing systems for stuff like that because, one, a lot can be scams, and two, they're charging more sometimes than what the actual filing is. Definitely be aware of that.
Okay. And open the business bank account like day one before you sell any products, right?
Yes. So that's why I said you will sometimes, if you are just starting out, you'll have those startup costs. And for the most part, they're always going to be on your personal account until you get the business account. The biggest thing is if you do a DBA, there's a little bit more leeway as far as the business side and the personal side. But if you do file for an LLC, the second you get your LLC paperwork, you immediately go to the bank, get a business bank account, and do not use that business bank account for personal expenses.
Okay.
So that is definitely number one.
Yes.
Don't do that.
All right. The next question asks about organizing everything within your accounting software. And you've touched on this a little bit already.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that I feel like I experience. I just never know if I'm tagging things right. And I don't know if maybe I'm overthinking it, but
a lot of times you are. And so when it comes down to building out the chart of accounts and you have your categories, any type of software, whether it's QuickBooks or Xero, they're always going to have, I think they start at like 45 different categories. And most people in this type of business, you're not going to use all 45 categories. But this really comes down to, again, this comes down to you and how you like organization. As I have one where I have one client where we have the cost of goods sold, but as a subcategory, I have specifically for food ingredients, I have for bag ingredients, I have for stickers. We do keep those separate than, let's say, office supplies or printing supplies, because technically that goes down to the actual way that we're packaging that product. If you think about, let's say, you have storage, right? You have like a Google storage or Apple storage. That would go under office supplies, or it could go under software. Both of those are the same. The biggest thing is, let's say you have a mixer, you have an oven, you have a very big expense. And if it's over a certain threshold, you actually are going to categorize those as an asset. So they're no longer an expense and they'll have a depreciating cost. You can cost the depreciating cost out over a year, over 3 years, over 5 years. You would get with an accountant on exactly how they want to do that, depending on the price. So if it meets a certain threshold, you'll probably just do a year. But if it's higher, let's say you have a business van to go doing deliveries, that's definitely a higher depreciation or a longer length of time.
Okay. So to organize in a nutshell, sort of use some of the categories that are already built in.
Yes. So you can use categories that are already built in, or I'm really totally fine. Yeah, if you just email me or message me and say, hey, how should I probably build out my chart of accounts? But the main ones you'll work with this type of business is your cost of goods sold, which is going to be a lot of your inventory, product purchases, your assets. If you have big equipment, like a mixer, an oven, if you're buying a table, of course, the labor, and then your rent. So the things to think about is most of those are going to be expenses, except for your equipment, which will be an asset.
That's so good to know. Okay. Those were the questions we had. All right. This has been so incredibly helpful for me, and I hope for all the listeners too. So you've told us a little bit about just how critically important it is to be checking in
Yes.
on the syncing of our accounts every day.
Yes.
And checking in weekly and then monthly to avoid overwhelm and that scrambling to catch up at tax season. Keep everything in line. I am so thankful for this. For those of us who are ready to hire a bookkeeper, tell us how we can find you, or if someone wants to work with someone local to them, what should they look for?
So you can hire me. I'm at Purple Elephant Bookkeeping. I answer Instagram messages. I also have a website that you can schedule a consultation. Consultations are free to start out with. And what we do is we just go over your whole business. I see exactly your goals, what you want to accomplish, look at kind of your history so far with bookkeeping, and then we go from there. If you are wanting to hire a bookkeeper local to you, you can go to the QuickBooks online for a pro advisor. You can do a Google search for bookkeepers in your area. You don't necessarily have to always go off of reviews, and I will say this because who is really reviewing your bookkeeper? Keep that in mind. You may find a business that probably doesn't have any reviews, but that doesn't mean they're a bad bookkeeper. That just means nobody is reviewing them.
That's because a good point.
We're the very last people on your mind to, I need to write a review for.
I feel like people only review when they're mad. Too. So don't let that.
Yeah, don't let that fool you. But one, you want to get a bookkeeper that's going to understand your business needs, is going to understand your business goals, and is someone that you get along with. There are some bookkeepers who you may hire and you're like, hey, I'm totally hands off. I don't want to even know what's going on. And you'll never, ever talk to them. I'm not that bookkeeper. I will talk to you so much. I will text you so much. And not because I don't know what I'm doing, but because I am so thorough at the bookkeeping that I'm like, okay, yeah, if I don't understand one thing, sometimes you get a transaction coming across your bank fee that's just that XY123. And I'm like, what is this? Let's talk about it. Because I do want to make sure you're not getting scammed. There's so many scams and so much fraud going on. I say that because I had a client who constantly, almost every other week, she had to go to the bank because she was getting so much fraud on her card. So I was like, yeah, I definitely double check all of that stuff. But yeah, just someone that you're going to get along with and ask those questions in the beginning. How many times are they going to talk with you? What are they going to provide for the price that you're getting? And don't be afraid to say, yeah, I want to know my profit and loss every month, or I want to know my balance sheet every month, or anything like that. So it does depend on how hands-on, hands-off you want to be. I love the clients that are hands-on. I want to make sure that we are hitting all of your goals. If you want to expand, if you want to grow, if you're saving for a piece of equipment, those are things that a good bookkeeper may not necessarily have to do, but they're definitely going to stay in line to know that you can reach that, I guess you could say. Yeah. Because there are bookkeepers out there that just categorize, send you the sheet, and that's it. So you do want one that is going to align with your business goals.
Okay.
If they don't work for you, if you're not getting what you need, even if they're taking too long, let's say you're waiting on paperwork from them or reports from them from July, and you're like, hey, I really need this. I need it. And they're not giving it to you. Yeah, let them go. Find someone else. There's nothing wrong with it.
Amazing. Is there any final advice or resources that you would offer to bakers, whether they are just getting started or somewhere in the middle of their journey?
Yes, don't overthink it. It really isn't that hard, especially when it comes to the finances. There is so much information out there. There are so many people like me who are willing to help, to guide you, to get you on the right track for your bakery. And start categorizing now. Start getting into those good habits now of keeping track of your expenses, not just always looking at, oh, how much do I have in my bank today to go buy flour? Like really think about where you want to be in your future and how your finances can get you there.
Okay.
But I do have an offer.
Yes.
The actual offer. I don't know how we want to do it, but if they want to give their email or message me their email and I can sign them up for our newsletter, we really don't email too often. But when we do email, it's going to be really good information, a really good tip. But with subscribing to our newsletter, you will get our DIY small business tracker. And it's a super in-depth, it's practically QuickBooks, but in a Google Sheets form. And usually we sell it, but we're going to give it away to everyone that comes from the Breadwinner podcast.
Amazing.
And it's really cool because it can track for like 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really nice. You just input your transactions, your money, and then it just goes to the next sheet and you have your profit and loss and it goes to the next sheet. It'll show your balance sheet. The only kicker with this is that you do have to do everything manually because it's not a part of QuickBooks. It's not a part of Xero. It is on Google Sheets. But if you are someone just starting out, it's great to get a feeler for how the bookkeeping works, how you need to start categorizing everything. It's also really good because you can see where these numbers are going automatically. So if you mess up one number here, you'll see it adjusted also in real time, the same way that you would with QuickBooks and Xero.
That's so helpful.
Yes.
Well, if you have a landing page to sign up for your newsletter, I can put it in the show notes.
Okay.
And so people can just jump down to the show notes and sign up there.
Awesome. Yes.
And get your newsletters and get the small business tracker. So valuable. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Because I just remember when I was in the bakery and having to do the bakery stuff and do the finances was so overwhelming. So I want every baker to succeed. I want you to make it and succeed and start really good habits from the very beginning. Or hire a bookkeeper, but you should also still have some knowledge about it, about how it works, how it's running, so that way you have questions as well.
Amazing. If you're like me and you are at the point where you need to hire a bookkeeper and you've been DIYing it up till now, reach out to Megan at Purple Elephant Bookkeeping, and I'll put her social media down in the show notes as well, so you can connect with her. Make sure you grab that spreadsheet and get her newsletters. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
It's been so fun. Also, Megan's going to teach me to make croissants.
And you're going to teach me to make sourdough?
I am. I'm so excited.
And I'll have to send you my croissant. I have one photo where the honeycomb was just perfect. And I show this to almost everybody. I'm surprised I didn't show it to you that day, but it was my most proud moment.
I totally understand that.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm so excited. All right. I will be back very soon with another episode. But until then, make sure you're following the show. Leave me a review. Follow so you don't miss upcoming episodes. They drop every Monday and Thursday. And if you are enjoying the show, make sure you take a screenshot. Tag me at CarolineBauer_sourdough on Instagram. If you want to tag Megan for this episode too, your handle is
at Purple Elephant Bookkeeping. And bookkeeping is 2 O's, 2 K's, and 2 E's.
Love it. If you tag us, I love to reshare those posts, and it helps us all get connected so we can all grow thriving businesses together. I'll be back soon. Until next time, happy baking.
Bye. Thanks, guys.